Hi, I'm Douglas Vogt from the Dye-Hill Foundation, and this is part 5B, and the part that everybody's been waiting for is how to save yourself from this geomagnetic reversal, polar reversal, nova, cataclysm, whatever you want to call it. What might happen during the next Gleisberg cycle in 27.5 years. So I'm going to divide this. I don't know how long this is going to go. I'm hoping less than an hour, but you never can tell, but forgive me. I'm going to cover, this video is going to cover the hard way of surviving this thing. This is the way most have done it in the past. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking right now. I'm going to explain what happens like about 40 to 50 years before the reversal, then the time of the reversal, and then finally the aftermath, what happens after. And then finally what structures to build and where. So we'll start in. This information partially comes from God's Judgement book, which is going to go to the printers. I'm going to print more up. There's, I think, 77 or so left at Amazon, the hardcovers. I'll be reprinting the paperbacks. So if you order, if they run out of the hardbounds in about a month's time, we should have the paperbacks. Reality Reveal is out of print. Like I mentioned in the previous, the cheapest I've seen on Amazon has been like $400 up to $1,100, and they sold fast. I may reprint some of this book. I have it on a CD, $10 plus $3 for mailing, domestic. International, I think, is like $5 or $4. But that's where some of this is coming from, plus new information I've included in this video. Okay, first period, 50 years leading up to it. The magnetic field is going to be decaying, as I've shown in the previous video. It's starting to decay exponentially. And it doesn't have to go to zero. It can go to like 20,000 nanoteslas or 15,000 and then flip. The Earth's magnetic, the rotation is due to the Earth's magnetic field. So there's many legends or mythologies that say the Earth slowed down. And I expect that as the magnetic field decays, as I showed from the RAND Corporation report, the Air Force knew that there's a connection between the Earth's rotation and the Earth's magnetic field. But we may have 25-hour days to maybe as much as 28-hour days before the reversal. Then you know it's too late then, but it's going to happen momentarily. But we just don't know how much time between the slowdown and when it happens. Okay, heat source at the center of the Earth. What I theorize is not a center core, as I've mentioned in this series, video series 4, part 4A. What the heat source is in the center of the Earth, as well as the center of the Sun. It's a center modulation point. The information going into it is something like this, a toroid shape. As this information gets more unstable, more potential to it, what I believe happens is the opening in this thing gets larger and larger. And it's producing more and more heat. There's a plasma in this area. There's 4 states of matter: solid, liquid, gas, and plasma. I'll define plasma for what I believe it is using my theory of existence. It's a case where, remember I showed the atom traces out a toroid shape, the information does. Every time it crosses the x-axis, it's creating the atom physically. I think as the potential gets greater and greater, this hole in the middle gets larger and larger. The toroid gets larger and larger. At some point, the dipole can't transmit that information to that point in time and space stably. So it almost instantly disappears, demodulates, and then it tries to send the information back again. So this back and forward will create a lot of voltage. So it's part information of the atom plus a lot of potential or voltage. And that's what this plasma would be. As it gets greater, the outer mantle is going to heat up. Then the crust or the lithosphere, and then we finally have a crust which is 20 to about 40, 50 miles thick is what they estimate, is going to start basically really getting hotter. We'll have more volcanoes, earthquakes, because the plates are going to be able to move much more freely. So we're going to have an incidence of more earthquakes, which we are seeing around the Ring of Fire and every place where two plates come together. So that's the mechanism we're going to see before the event. On the sun's output's going to be increasing. You'll see it in solar wind, sunspots, the CMEs, and a lot of other things. Ben Davidson's website, Suspicious Observers, is probably the best one to go to know the daily activity of the sun. And he does an excellent job on his book also on giving you a good education on the sun and its structure. Increase in solar output. Now this is to show what I showed in the previous one. Global surface temperature anomalies, they link with the output of the sun is in red, and the output and the warming of the earth is the same. It's 100% correlation. Shows you from, well, here was our last Gleisberg cycle here, and it went straight up. Same thing here. And was expected to go 2010, it went up. Global ocean temperature, which I explained in the previous, is a direct result of solar output. So regardless of what they may say, the ocean temperature going up because the output of the sun is increasing. Not just the visible light, it's the stuff we also don't see is heating it up too. Ocean water heats up, we get more tornadoes, more hurricanes, because the ocean heats up. I'm here in Florida over here by Jacksonville, and we had, I think, 2 hurricanes last year and the year before, and so we're going to get, every place on the East Coast is going to get more hurricanes, more storms, stuff like that. Can't avoid it. Typhoons in the Pacific. Polar ice caps and glaciers will start melting, which it has been. This is 1989. Here's 2017. See how much it's melted. There's so many cases you could see online. I don't want to repeat it too many times because I want to talk about some other things later on in this video. But glaciers are melting and stuff like that. It has nothing to do with CO2. This is a recent thing, and it's because of solar output is increasing on the entire spectrum, not just the visible stuff. In fact, I've heard stories that 50, 100 years ago, the sun was more yellow than it is now. Now it's more white, which means the output's increasing. Part 2. So anyway, part 1 was more earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, solar output flares, solar flares, maybe some aurora borealis and australis you'll see on the northern and southern hemisphere. Okay, part 2. At the time of the reversal, the first thing you're going to have is this big Earth is going to stop rotating, as I explained in parts 4F and 4G, and I'm going to add another to explain it further because some people still had questions. This thing's going to stop. We're here in the United States. That's all ocean. That's the Pacific. Guess where that's going? That away. And we don't see the light from the sun for 8 minutes. So the people on the West Coast are so lucky. They won't see the sun go off, because right now we don't know what side they're going to be facing when it does nova. But they're going to have the great pleasure of seeing the Pacific Ocean rushing towards them real fast, maybe 300-400 miles an hour, maybe 500 miles an hour. And they won't have a chance even to know what's going on other than this is going to happen and massive earthquakes at the same time. Then you know, if you're inland, maybe 200-300 miles inland and still in California, you're going to know what already happened. Don't bother calling anybody on the West Coast. They're not there anymore. So that's the process. So for 7 to 8 hours, this Earth is going to stop. And then it's going to slowly start rotating in the other direction, which makes the wave give you a second push. But it's not going further any faster. It's the Earth below is going in the other direction, so it's going to look like it's going faster to complete its journey across the entire United States. In fact, across both Americas. So if you're on the East Coast, you don't know what's just happened on the West Coast. If you're standing here, and this is Cape Hatteras in North Carolina, you're going to see the ocean water rushing away from you real fast. And then if you could fly or go to the edge of the continental shelf, you'll be able to look straight down. Now, all of these little canyons here are obviously done by water. And what's going to happen is when that ocean from the Pacific gets to the other side, it goes over the continent, over this entire shelf. Most of it, much of it will follow the major rivers, the Potomac, the Hudson, etc. But you can see these channels or canyons all through the entire continental shelf. And this exists on every continent, the entire world. This drama is going to happen all over. That's what causes this. Nothing else, not electric beams from space, nothing. That's it. I was going to say also, it's not like a tidal wave or a tsunami. This is the whole mass of the ocean coming towards you real fast. The crust of the Earth, just like this ocean swims on the crust is swimming on a sea of magma on the lithosphere, or mantle, and it's going to bang up against each other. And you're going to have massive earthquakes that are going to last for hours, if not days, until these plates stabilize. So you'll get two punches. Once when the thing stops, and then when the Earth starts going the other direction, it's going to be another big spike of earthquakes in magnitude. Until it's going to probably days or weeks until all these crusts stabilize. That's why many of the mountain ranges have a north-south orientation worldwide, but not all. So some mountains are going to get pushed up, some are going to drop down. Some valley is going to cease to be a valley and be a mountain maybe. The sun. The classic magnetic field deep inside the sun will create a large spike of energy, which we call a nova. Now, these are stars that, except for, well, all of them that I'm going to show here, are all less than the 12,000 light years away. Now, I'll explain. Here's one of them. Here's the planetary plane, and its north and south poles seem to blow outward vertically. And that tells you immediately there's something going on with this kind of a shape, this toroid shape going inside. But the plane along here blows outward. And this is an example of that. You can clearly see it. If this star had any planets here, they're going to get the big dusting. Same thing here. The planetary plane is right here. We're looking at it at an angle, kind of like this towards you. And the north and south poles send blobs of energy. This is like a plasma sent north and south. This one here is very good. It shows the circular design. The planetary plane here, but I don't see much of the dust. I don't know why. Maybe it's a very young star. I don't know. And this is where I cover some of this stuff, Series 4, Part 2. Here's some others. This was 11 to 11,500 light years away. This thing just blew. So this is about like 300 to 400, maybe 500 years after its nova. North and south poles blow, and across the horizontal, it bulges out. I don't know about the star other than it's maybe a big one, but it's an unusual shape. One thing I've noticed, and I think many of you have, all the stars seem to blow differently. It's like separate their own personalities, you know? Here's another, blows north and south, the poles. Here's the planetary plane, the dust shell here. And here's another one, here's the dust shell, and here it blew up way up there. It's amazing. and down here. Some of these photos are a composite, not just visible light, but infrared and ultraviolet, and then they combine all of them. Sometimes even the radio telescopes, if they can resolve it clear enough, they'll put all of them together and you get these wonderful pictures. Okay, people on the sun side of the Earth will be able to see the sun expand, the solar disk getting larger as it expands towards the Earth for 7 to 8 hours. The Earth will not be rotating. Now, if you want to know why the scientists, geologists found a higher incidence of CO2 in the gas bubbles of the ice cores they got from Greenland and also Antarctica, is because of everything facing that sun is going to burn. Anything organic is going to burn. Hence, a byproduct is CO2 and carbon monoxide, plus a lot of other gases too. But it's all going to be burning. Everything above ground is going to burn. But after the nova, between 10 to 15 minutes, maybe up to 30 seconds, you're going to have a burst of cosmic and gamma rays. So anything also on the surface is going to get a dose of cosmic rays. I don't know what the concentration is going to be, but some may be high enough to kill you. So if you're in a cave or some big structure, that probably will protect you. But that is how we have new species at the time of a polar reversal, a geomagnetic reversal. It's because you have an older species, and then you have a reversal, and then you have a slightly newer species based on an older one, because their DNA was changed because of that. So within 10 minutes to 15 after the reversal, or if you see the sunlight, that's 8 minutes, figure you got 2 to 4 minutes to hightail it into a cave or some kind of a shelter. The particles may last up to 30 seconds during this event. So in other words, we don't know when it'll arrive, but it may only last for about 30 seconds. If it's more, I'll stand corrected. Really, nobody really knows, because we haven't lived through this before, so it's kind of guesswork, but it's educated guesswork. Okay. Besides getting a dose of cosmic rays in the heat, this is what I estimate is going to happen for the ocean on the ocean side of the sun side of the Earth. A big spike, evaporating maybe as much as 1,000 feet of water. Much will come back in the form of hot rain immediately after, but it stabilizes and goes up like this to certainly over 400 feet below current sea level within, let's say, a month or so after the event. And it stays that way for, well, they think the end of the ice age was like here, and we know it was like about 150, 200 feet below sea level. On my videos here, part 2 and series 4, part 4E, I go into the ocean levels and the carbon-14 dating of debris, organic material found in the continental shelf. It gives you an idea of how low it was and how long it stayed low. 17 to 18 hours later, we get this dust shell. This is a star. We're looking through the north pole of it, the pole of it, and this is the dust shell around it. You know, when they give an explanation, this is a planetary nebula, this is a brand new star, this is the stuff that makes it up, they're lying. They're grossly lying. It's not, and they know it. But they don't want you to look at the sun and that stars do nova. They'll do anything to lead you away from that, including saying that you're causing global warming, not the sun. So, equatorial region of the sun will blow outward. That's the dust shell. We get it within 17, 18 hours. This is some of the material that they found on the Earth. I've already shown in previous videos what they found on the moon and other parts of the Earth. So it's these little tiny glass beads, and with some of them have fission tracks in it, and aluminum-26, barium-10, and a whole bunch of radioactive elements can only come from relativistic temperatures, atomic bombs going off. When the dust shell hits, First, the water gets evaporated. We're going to have a bunch of clouds around the Earth, thick, thick clouds. Because a lot of water is evaporated, it's going to go up in the form of steam. I don't know how high in the atmosphere, but probably very high and very dense. It's a boiling mess, at least on one side of the Earth. When that dust shell comes, it's going to blow a lot of this away on one side of the Earth. So, I explained it in the other one, I'll do it again. Last time the sun hit, I believe along this line here, roughly either 105 or 110 degrees east longitude rather, and where China is and India, because they saw it, and we have evidence of bone with fission tracks in it. So the sun started to get extremely low atmosphere. So 17, 18 hours later was here. The the dust shell hits, evacuates a lot of atmosphere on this side of the Earth, or did, past tense. This side was normal atmospheric temperature. But what happens is this expanded rapidly, came around to equalize the extremely low pressure here. The result is you have extremely high-speed winds around it. That book, Adam and Eve's story, I think they were shooting from the hip. They said 1,000 miles an hour. No, I don't think air can go that fast. I think it's probably in the 300 to 400 mile an hour range. And it's going to come around and to fill up this area. Remember also, it's not my job also to figure exactly some of these numbers. We pay NASA and NOAA billions of dollars to figure things like this out. They haven't done such a hot job because they haven't told us of the warning. Some may not know, but a few in NASA I damn well do know they know. So it's their job to figure out the nuts and bolts and the actual numbers by modeling it to find out what the speeds of these things are really going to be. Not my job. I'm the philosopher trying to tell you what the danger you're in. So, going to go around the Earth. So you're going to have high-speed winds also on top of it, besides everything else that's going on. It's basically a cacophony of disasters and death. As I said, it's Boyle's law. On the backside, what happened, you had the temperature drop to well over 170 below zero. It's probably in the 200, 220 degrees below Fahrenheit, zero below Fahrenheit on this side. And that's why you have those fast frozen animals, and you have that wave down here that was frozen solid in place. Just amazing. This is the other side. This is in Siberia. They found this frozen cave lion. It's a baby mastodon, fast frozen, woolly rhinoceros, fast frozen, in ice and permafrost, basically. Okay, big question. What side of the Earth is going to be facing the sun when it novas? What side of the Earth will be getting the dust shell 17 to 18 hours later? That's the big question. There's two ways to figure it out. One is in the sedimentary evidence of the different polar reversals. Do you see fission tracks in the glass beads or in fossils or in mica that's on the Earth? You'll see the fission tracks. That'll tell you definitively what side of the Earth was facing when the sun novaed. Then now since I've told you the Earth stops its rotation, goes the other way, you'll have an alternate situation that about almost on the other side of the Earth. It's not really, it's 17 hours later on the other side. You're going to wind up getting this, the opposite effect, freezing and stuff like that. So that's one. The glass beads might be another way to see if they have fission tracks in them. And the quantity of glass beads in certain areas could maybe tell you what side of the Earth got the dusting. There's another thing that's kind of interesting. Now, this is a scientist, I mentioned it in a previous video, I didn't put it here, that the wandering North Magnetic Pole has gone from here, but you'll notice it's basically 120 degrees each one. The other interesting thing is in the Torah, it mentions the number 123 times. 3 times 120 is 360, like 360 degrees. Could this be telling us, and also the clues in the Torah, that if you know the last time the sun novaed here, you could figure it out backwards that the next time it'll either be 120 degrees further east to that last one would be 120 degrees west latitude, no, is longitude rather, running through Seattle and San Francisco and LA. So that side would get the sun. If not, then it would be almost Greenwich mean, actually. Europe and Africa would get the cooking, but the other side, that would get the freezing. If that gets the freezing, we're going to have one hell of an ice age. One hell of an ice age. As it is now, if it does here, and the Pacific Ocean is rushing over the continent, that nova is going to see nothing but a lot of ocean. And again, we're going to have a tremendous amount of evaporation and one hell of an ice age. Now, the next time, when it rotates in the other direction like this, the jet streams are going to go this way. That means China, Siberia, and India are going to have one hell of an ice age. They're going to have the 4 and 5 mile thick ice fields because they're going to have one hell of a dusting. Snow. Okay, after the reversal, the day after the reversal, you're going to have, this is an apartment building, actually fell over and cracked in the middle. Isn't it amazing? This, I think, was a Taiwan earthquake of 8 on the Richter scale. But you're not going to have any buildings on the surface. They're going to be washed away by that wave, but you're going to have a lot of earthquakes, a tremendous amount, all over 8 to 10 on the Richter scale. Should have mentioned earlier, before the reversal, the nova, you're going to have volcanoes going off. They'd have to be. And I think there has been an increase in volcanic activity. But during and after, you're going to have these things going off like mad. And there'll be a pulse, another increase in earthquakes and volcanoes going off about 220 to 240 days after the reversal. Because remember, it takes time for that increased heat in the center of the Earth to percolate to the surface. And you'll have another spike of earthquakes and these guys going off worldwide. If you're near a volcano, you don't want to be on the west side of it. You may want to be on the east side of it because the dusting is going to come down. That's my experience from when Mount St. Helens erupted. Also, at the time of the reversal and after, you're going to have dark clouds. I mean, the amount of water that's evaporated is huge. And after the nova and the dust show goes, the sun is mostly going to give off ultraviolet light. That's why the sunspots are dark, but when you look at the sunspot with an ultraviolet camera lens, they're very bright. Now, Ben Davidson again and myself have been working on how much light will the ultraviolet light give and how much evaporation will give. He called me a few days ago and he thought the ultraviolet may actually cause some of the snow to evaporate more quickly than we thought. But he's still working on it. There's going to be a tremendous amount of lightning because the atmosphere is like a big capacitor. When this thing goes off, there's going to be a lot of lightning, sheets of it. Plus a massive amount of rain. The first rain is probably going to be hot, scalding rain. In fact, the Bible says, the Torah says the same thing in Genesis. And then it will gradually start cooling down, and then it'll start snowing. This kind of snow, whiteout conditions. But it's not going to be this bright. At least we don't think so. And the Earth will be covered again with a big cloud cover for maybe 40 or 50 years, and it's going to be snowing and snowing and snowing. And not stop until all that has been wrung out of the atmosphere. It'll start off like this if your city is still standing and the ocean didn't get to you. In fact, the Chinese, I don't think the Chinese are going to see the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic is just not big enough to get to China. I don't think it is. So it'll start out like this, but it's going to end like this. Your cities are going to be down there and crushed from the weight of this stuff, if not the earthquakes finishes it off. So probably 1,000 years after this stuff melts, all you're going to find is rusted girders and gravel. If you don't do anything and you think I'm wrong that this thing's going to happen in 27.5 years, then your grandson or great-grandson is going to be this guy here, looking for food and be a nice caveman, something like this. I don't know if this is real. It's got one hell of a mountain of ice here and snow and a couple of guys coming out of a cave. Now, where to build a shelter? What's the best chance of surviving this thing? Assume this whole thing is going to be covered in white, like that picture showed. Earth is going to be entirely white. It's not going to get any better. The first part that's going to be melting is in this area here, around the equator. This is still within the range of the how the sun wanders between the two equators and stuff like that. So this is where you want to be. So probably within the first 10 or 20 years, it'll start melting here. And so you want to be in a very big structure, which I'll handle. I'll cover a few minutes. So you want to be in this area. This will take a little bit longer. This may be another 15 to 20 years to melt. But this is the area you want to be in. Now I have show here for the Americas. Up here, snow and ice for at least 150, 200 years maybe. So the first parts of the United States will be Florida and southern Texas to get melted. But you generally don't want to be up here for certainly the first 50 or 60 years or more. I mean, again, NOAA and NASA has to go really figure it out. In Africa, the equator is here. This is Lake Victoria. And the highlands of Ethiopia are up here. And the last ice age where the Blue Nile and the White Nile met, there was an ice dam that went from here to there. It went up to 16 degrees north. And this thing was all water. When the dam broke, it went down the Nile and scored the Nile some places down to bedrock. So you imagine how fast this part of the Mediterranean filled up when this thing went. But that's how serious this thing is. This is what happened before. But you want to be in this area again. Probably the Europeans and the people, the Arabs and stuff like that, and the Russians will probably try to be here. I wouldn't want to be in Russia. It'll be just ice for hundreds of years, maybe 500 years. In the Indian Ocean, same thing. Indonesia, Malaysia, Borneo. The only problem with Indonesia, it's just a string of volcanoes. They're all going to be going off. So you have to really pick where you're going to be or to build. Southeast Asia might be just fine. The ocean water here should be somewhat warm, so it may melt faster here along this area. But again, don't know until you do more investigations. Up here is going to be just ice and snow for a long time. Here's the equator, same area. You want to be in this area and here, but away from a volcano, high enough that the Indian Ocean is going to be coming this way. So you have to, whatever you build is going to be, has to be watertight and take that kind of pressure. Australia, up here, maybe you should be able to make it. in here in the highlands might work, but again, we don't know how fast the snow and the ice would melt. Okay, the choice of what you build. The mythologies around the world. You can go to VectorPub, go to Reality Reveal, the book, go to chapter 11, you could read it there. It's your ancestors screaming from their graves of what happened to them. But because they survived it, we're here today. These are caves in Venezuela. There's some very good legends that say they survived it in these high mountains. And the reason they're high up is because they knew the water was going to come underneath. In that case, it was the Atlantic, and they wanted to be high and dry. Here's some cave dwellers. They don't know the age of them, and it's about 57 miles from Beijing. These are found, by the way, all over the world. Just look for human cave dwelling on not YouTube, but Google, and you'll see hundreds, if not thousands. Here's another one in Nepal, high up in the mountains. And these caves were actually started from the top and they dug down. And this debris here is from when they dug these caves here. And it's kind of a strange place to go, but somebody survived it here, otherwise they wouldn't have been digging caves, tunnels. They may have survived them. This is one, I think it was in Europe, in the Balkan areas, and it did not get the water. So they didn't get flooded out. I believe it was in this area in here. And so they would have the Black Sea, but that's not much of an ocean. And I don't think it got this far, the Pacific. So I think that's why they probably survived it. That's the kind of structure you're going to build to survive this thing. The reason being is you have a wall of water coming at 300 or 400 miles an hour. That's going to be maybe 1,000 feet thick. It's going to come this way real fast. You have any perpendicular shape, it's going to get knocked over by that water, by that wall of water. This shape is the only one that's going to survive it. That's why they built them. This is an artist's rendition of what they think the original pyramid looked like before the Muslim Arabs stripped off the limestone to build their mosques and other buildings in Cairo. That's right, they're the ones who did it. This is a very large one in China. There's over 400 pyramids in the area. Many of them are burial tombs, but some of them are not. But you have to ask yourself the question, what told them to make this shape? This is almost the same shape you saw in the Americas. So why do they build this shape? Also, that's north, north magnetic. This is north axis pole. Who told them to build it based on the axis of the Earth? It's not random. They're both the same. Why this shape? You have to ask yourself that. Even if it's a burial tomb made after the fact, which some of them are not. They had something in their legends. The Chinese had the legends. They knew what happened. To build this shape to survive it. Here's more Chinese pyramids. Here's one. Here's another one covered with a forest, basically. If you do nothing, this is what the lucky ancestor, your luckily children, grandchildren, yet unborn generations are going to be like. Back to the Stone Age. Ladies, no women's lib. No equal rights. You'll be the property of some old guy like this. No cell phones, no malls, no TV, no internet. It's back to this. So, if you want an incentive, ladies, to help and to tell people, this is it. Family unit, lovely. This is a little further away, you know, maybe 1,000 years after. Gee, doesn't look, Ralph Lauren is not being sold. No shoes either. Okay. Because the seriousness of the subject and what I've proved in this, now you understand what I've done this whole series. I had to give you the science foundation to understand why this thing happens. There's either 3 or 5 stages of grief. Disbelief, denial, isolation. Some of you have already gone through that. I've seen some of the comments and some of the emails. The next stage is anger, and you should be angry. This could have been figured out a long time ago, but you don't know who to blame. I'm going to tell you on version 12. This error goes back to about over 1900 years, why you were stuck with a matter theory of existence that couldn't possibly figure this stuff out. Then you're going to be angry, but not at me. Bargaining, only if you didn't have that matter theory of existence and the government came clean with us. That would have been nice also. But I want to make it plain. I can't blame those in government and the CIA for doing what they're doing. If I had the body of knowledge they had 60 years ago and 50 when they brought these samples back from the moon, that came from the sun, I'd probably make the same decision, not telling anybody, because it would cause panic, and they didn't know when it was going to happen. Remember, I'm the one who figured out when it's going to happen. They didn't. So the bargaining, only what if. 4, depression, some of you may already be there. Don't. You're not going to survive this thing or your children if you stay depressed. And finally, acceptance. But there's got to be another one. Action. In short, get off your ass and you have to do something. Now, you can't survive this thing on small groups of people, 100,000, even 500,000. Like I explained here, this takes big government to survive this thing. And when I mean that, so I'll explain why. I don't even have to, I'll step back and read this thing, but what it takes is you have to organize food, how to store food, what necessities you have to have for maybe 30 or 40 years until you can get out of your cave or the ground it's warm enough sunshine to grow plants again and start the cycle over again. You have to save the animals and some insects. There's a lot you have to do, and it takes a national effort to do it. I don't think one country should do it for everybody. Every country should do their own, and it's a result of the people voted their government in. They get the government they deserve. It's as simple as that. Maybe kind of harsh, but I'm sorry, you can't save everybody. You have to save those who you can save and who will be healthy enough to live through this thing. Let me see if I haven't missed anything. I'm sure almost all the politicians do not know of what I've explained in these videos. They aren't going to be told. They're a bunch of lawyers. What does a lawyer know, right? They don't know any of this stuff. They're as ignorant as you can get of this subject. And you have to force them to have hearings with the few people in NASA and also in the CIA to come clean and expose what they do know. USGS might know also some of the stuff, but I don't think so. I think what it is basically within the CIA, and I don't mean all agents, there's only one group. This is kind of a secret that cannot be kept a secret. Like I showed with the Ken Kuzmin letter, a lot of scientists back in the 60s and 70s knew something was up with the sun, and that's what causes the ice age and the mass extinctions. They knew it. They didn't know the mechanism. I had to come along and figure that one out. So I don't want you to get mad and be mad at government in general. They made the best decision they could. We now, the people, have to force them to do the right thing. And remember, they have to get educated on this also, and hopefully they'll see the videos and understand the importance of it. And also that they've been lied to, openly lied to. Diehole Foundation, nonprofit foundation. This book is being printed up now. They'll be back in Amazon within, I hope 2 weeks. It's the 10th of April now, so figure about the 20th of April. They'll be back in Amazon, so you can pick them up. This is the philosophy. This is where you have to start from to figure the whole thing out. I hope you got something from this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Spread it out. Remember, the idea is to get at least 10 to 20% of the population to know this stuff so they can force government to do the right thing.